All right, so we're now recording.
Okay, so the reason why we're gonna call a finance committee meeting to order, what's the date today?
17th, January 17th.
January 17th, it's Tuesday night. The meeting has started at 7:15. Purpose for tonight's meeting is to reorganize and to discuss the schedule that's been laid out for us going forward. So with that being said, has anybody got any concerns?
Well, I'd like to talk maybe less about the schedule, more about the process.
That's fine.
So I did see the schedule of the departments that are going to be presenting, and there's a list that it seems like we're doing the joint with the select board.
Mhm.
But I think some of the challenge last year, as I remember, was the ability to have kind of dialogue with the department heads once they had kind of finalized their budgets and had submitted them.
Right. I think I remember that, right? That concerned the majority of the members.
So I know we have, it seems like a schedule for the kind of first pass with the department heads and the select board, but I'm not sure if there's been a schedule in place for each of the department heads to come in and kind of walk through their budget line by line with us.
Well, what I
as a
think it
review.
is, I think one of the major miscommunications is the Board of Selectmen has taken over the budget, and we now have a finance group, and nobody's told the finance committee what their new role is going to be. So, in my opinion, we're kind of floundering around, going, what's going on? I mean, things are definitely, the way that it's being done is definitely being changed from the previous 20 years that I've been on it. And again, I'm not speaking against it, but it would help if it was defined to the members. We get new members, just what the finance committee's role is. There's no definition of it anymore.
I'd 100% agree. And honestly, as of right now, I wonder what the purpose of this committee actually is, because it feels like the way this committee is used, it can be perfectly well replaced with an Excel spreadsheet, as long as we enter in the proper entries, of whether the summation at the bottom is black or red.
Yeah.
So I completely agree that the role and responsibility and how this
Right.
committee wants to be used is completely up in the air and undefined.
If you read the town bylaw on the finance committee, the way I've read it, when I was first on it, was, again, I don't want to sound like an old man, but 20 years ago, the finance committee is the taxpayers' watchdog. And our job is to make sure, because we represent the taxpayers, because we're made up from the citizens of this town as taxpayers, to make recommendations to our fellow citizens and taxpayers that the money being spent and how can I put it, the way that the finance of the town is going is acceptable. That's why there's a diverse group of people on this board. You know what I mean? So, and I understand it's changing. I think on one hand, it's a good thing we have professional finance people doing it, but the one thing that's lacking is there's no clear definition of what our new role is. And that might take changing the bylaw, which isn't a willy-nilly thing to be doing. You know, there's some thought got to be put into this. So, I mean, that's what I see.
I would say without a change to the bylaw, our role should be the same, which is, kind of reviewing each department's budget, reviewing the line items, asking the questions and making recommendations if it's prudent.
Right, to the taxpayer, i.e. the citizens of this town.
Right.
It seems like the last couple of years we've been told what to do, which is fine. We've always asked for direction.
Yeah.
But how do we cure the problem? How do we feel better about it? I don't know.
I guess I would ask my compadres here their point of views on this, other than mine.
Well, my point of view is, I completely agree with the joint meeting to go over the department, with the department heads. As being on both sides of that coin, I'd much rather do the dance once than multiple times. And it's a lot easier just to have everybody in the room. I personally have no disregard for the fact that I could personally drag a select board meeting out until 2:00 in the morning, asking a million questions if that's what I want to see happen, right? If I need to go into that level of detail with them, I have no problem doing that in the middle of a select board meeting if, because we all agree that that's the way to go about it. So like, I don't need each department head to come in front of us specifically only as a finance committee. I'm perfectly fine with it being joint. I want to just be able, I feel comfortable using that forum as I would us being alone. So,
Right, but historically, and I'm happy to be corrected, but historically, as I understand it and how I've experienced it, is that the budget isn't finalized at those initial presentations. There's some negotiations or some discussions, depending on what the department heads are suggesting, that then gets redefined and then presented to us as close to final as once the select board is able to review all the department's requests and recommendations. So to me, that's a first pass versus kind of a final. Here's what the select board has kind of quote approved, and here's what the department heads are requesting. That we can get into that level of detail, as typically there's maybe changes from.
I would say also in regards to that, there's, how early in the sausage making do you start bringing in more people, right? That's a constant battle of, okay, well, lots of people need to be involved in the decision making, but how early do you bring them in? There's never a perfect answer to that one. I don't view the budget presentations as, I don't believe they're final, right? And they're these ones that they're putting on the schedule. I still believe that there is back and forth afterwards.
Yeah, I would agree.
So I would say the presentations that we are lined up to see per the schedule that was sent out, we have the opportunity to call them back for additional information or to reassess something or ask for something to be changed off cycle before the finalization date, whatever that is.
I can only express my point of view is that I found it very useful to have Kim here with the department heads to review each of the budget items, and Kim can fill in the gaps that the department heads may not. She could fill in the gaps of the whole picture or be able to answer specific questions that maybe the department heads could. That I found very useful.
Yeah, I agree. Is there a reason we can't do that at the select board meeting?
Yeah. I'm sorry, did you want to
No,
say?
I'm done. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you that I think the consensus following the last round was that while there may very well have been some level of efficiency, which was the object, that was the intention behind it, I think most came away, I think, with what Nick's identified with sort of a feeling that we probably would have been better served perhaps to have Board of Selectmen and Kim sort of work on that first round and then start fresh with the presentation from the department heads. At least that's my recollection. with an explanation for what they want to accomplish and why. And then an opportunity to ask questions where the finance committee has its own meeting to ask its questions. Fact is that these are public hearings, right? Public meetings. Anybody
Open to
can,
the
everybody
public.
can go to the Board of Selectmen meeting. But things may change, right? Things may change after that first round. And I do think we benefit, for example, a great deal from, the work of the professionals here in town, including, but not limited to, Kim, to, sort of refine and define and narrow the scope of the issues for us, if you will, on what needs to be decided. And also, quite frankly, to tease out what the position of the Board of Selectmen is on a particular issue as well, where they have an opportunity to digest it. And Kim can communicate that as well, what the pleasure of the board is on a particular issue as well. It's a question of timing. So, I'm in agreement that I think that, for all the benefits of a joint meeting from an efficiency standpoint, I'm not so sure it really panned out like that after the experiment that we engaged in last year. I think it was good. I think it was worth the try. I think it was worth the effort. But, I had been on the finance committee as well, serving alongside some of the members here who had seen the sort of quote unquote, I'll call it the old process or the prior process. And my experience was that being able to go back and forth with particular department heads, ask the questions, get the answers, and to the extent they don't have the answers, I think they're very diligent about following up with the finance committee as well. And I would prefer an approach like that to your question, Mike, on the modification of the bylaw. I have the bylaw here in front of me, and as I look at the bylaw, I'm not quite so sure if I could point to what I understand your feeling in your view about.
Well, no, it's not my feeling of view, it's my interpretation of what that bylaw means.
I'm sorry.
It's not my feelings, it's interpretation of the bylaw. We all, each one of us can read that bylaw and come up with a different interpretation.
Yeah, I guess when when I mentioned your feeling about a modification to it, right? I'm not quite so sure, based on, again, a quick read of it, if a modification may be necessary. I'm just wondering if it may be just our approach, perhaps. I just throw that out there. Because, as I read through the bylaw itself, which of course what lies on top of this bylaw is a state law, right? So the idea is that if a town has a budget of over $1 million, which of course, show me the town that doesn't, I guess. So there's a requirement of a finance committee or an advisory board, if you will. So that's out there, right, already. So this is just the local bylaw that speaks to that. There shall be a finance committee consisting of 7 members to be appointed by the select board. Section 2, the committee shall organize each year by the selection of the chair and a clerk. The clerk shall keep the records of the activities of the committee. Section 3, it shall be the duty of the committee to consider all articles in the warrant, town meetings that involve the expenditure of money, which you have.
That is pretty plain English right there, right?
Mhm. And you have often quoted that.
Right.
The committee shall.
Money articles got to come before us. We got to discuss it, and we make a recommendation to our fellow taxpayers / citizens of this town. That's why it's made up of volunteers. None of us get paid, so they get an unbiased decisions and viewpoints.
It goes on to say the committee shall make recommendations at meetings in regard to the action that should be taken thereon. Section 4, no motion relating to the expenditure of money or an appropriation shall be acted upon at any town meeting until the finance committee has stated its recommendation. All officers, agents, committees of the town shall give the finance committee access to their books, records, accounts, and furnish all information with respect to the conduct of the town's affairs that it shall request. It shall make reports and recommendations to the select board with respect to the management of the town affairs and the conduct of all departments. Section 5, no paid town.
Now, let me stop you right there.
Sure.
Have we done that? That last paragraph that you read?
Well, this is a mandatory language, right? So when I'm reading here, it says shall. So it says all officers, agents, and committees of the town shall, not should, but shall, give the finance committee access to their books, records, accounts, and furnish all information with respect to the conduct of the town's affairs. With respect to that clause, at least my view is that I have no reason to believe that we haven't been furnished with anything that we've asked for. With respect, I don't know, did anybody have a contrary view? All right. And then it goes on to say that it shall make reports and recommendations to the select board with respect to the management of the town affairs and the conduct of the department.
Right there. When was the last time we made a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen? Anybody remember?
Well, I think I think basically that's the report, right? I think that's making reference to really to the report. I guess that's what I would argue.
That could be your interpretation, yeah. Anybody else have an interpretation?
I was in agreement with Jack until you brought it up, because I've never seen a finance committee operate in a different way. So my expectation of joining this committee was being much more involved earlier on versus being provided a presentation that was at a very high level, and then as a new person coming in, being expected to sort of understand it all and ask all the deep-rooted questions that give the level of depth of knowledge that's probably required to make the best recommendation, right? So I did the best that I can, and what I still feel was correct in any of my votings or recommendations based off of the information that I had. Whether that was enough and should have been more, I don't know what I don't know. I rely on Kim and the financial team to help provide some of those insights, which is great to have, because again, I don't, as volunteers, I don't have the time to be able to put in to get to that level of depth, right? So you need somebody to boil it up. So that's great to have. I just don't understand at the point where I question the role and responsibility is how much in partnership with the select board are we supposed to be operating in their recommendations and where they're trying to drive things, both short and long term. We're not in those conversations. We're not in those decision-making points. At least I'm not. I don't know if Mike was as a chair. I know I'm not.
I haven't been for a few years.
Yeah. But I guess this may very well be a bit of a perception, but the idea is that the board, right? They're duly elected. We're advisory, right? We're advisory to that board. They're duly elected to carry out and execute on their obligations as elected officials. And town meeting, of course, is where, the action is for those instances where the board needs to go or opts to go to town meeting in some situations as a decision-making body. But we, at all times, are advisors, right? We're not principals, we're advisors, right? So I think fairly the Board of Selectmen would view us as that. So when it comes to making decisions, I think it's up to us to exercise our purview here under the bylaw. But at the end of the day, all we can say is what we recommend and how they would proceed. And there's nothing to prevent us at town meeting from, quite frankly, disagreeing, right? Or in a forum like this, hypothetically, department head comes forward and says, my budget last year was X and I want 2X. Well, there's nothing to prevent us from saying we disagree and saying we disagree in writing. And then at town meeting, repeating the same thing from the floor.
Right.
At which point, the people can speak to the question and
Exactly.
either decide that our recommendation is worthy of credit, or not, right? I mean, that's the system, that's the process. So I wouldn't expect to be a decision maker. I would continue to be an advisor to the town, and more particularly to the Board of Selectmen in connection with the formulation of the budget. But ultimately, they're the ones who are accountable as elected officials.
Well, they're accountable to the voter.
Right.
And like I said,
Right.
we represent the voter. Bylaw, my opinion, the bylaw clearly states it. We represent the taxpayer and the voter, because we're making the recommendations to them.
Well,
Yet the public is relying on us as townspeople and our experiences
Yeah.
to
Well,
make the right decision for everyone. Again, obviously, you can't please everyone.
sure. Well, it does say, it, referring to the Finance Committee, shall make reports and recommendations to the Select Board with respect to the management of the town affairs and the conduct of all departments. So in my view, I believe we've executed on that obligation. We've made recommendations to them. At least in my opinion, we've made reports and recommendations to them. And I believe we've executed faithfully on that obligation. The extent to which that recommendation may be heard or, listened to or credited is really a question for the board and ultimately for the town meeting, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. I just think that it's kind of like anything else. The ability to have enough data to make the right recommendations and kind of informed opinion by the collective board, is based on what we're able to do. And I just felt like last year or last budget cycle, there wasn't enough, for me personally, enough information for me to generate truly informed decisions that I feel that I probably should have personally. So I was doing the best that I could with the information that I had, but I would have wanted more to hopefully make better decisions.
Yeah, I think what you're describing is really the, at least my memory, was the consensus of the committee, And I think to some extent, the roadmap that we had followed in the prior session about, joint sessions may have contributed to that, as opposed to agenda, making hypothetically fire chief, police chief are on the agenda. We'd love to hear from the respective chiefs on what their budget plan is this year, how it compares to last year, what they envision for the following years. Perfect opportunity for us to be asking questions, it seems to me, about the use of overtime versus, hiring another full-timer, capital planning and equipment to the extent that goes into the equation. I think, quite frankly, we have a broad purview to do that, but that's up to us, not other people. It's up to us.
So,
I'm not arguing. This is why we're meeting here, to discuss it,
Yep.
so everybody has a full understanding of what we're doing. We have a new member here. And let me ask the new member, when you were appointed, did anybody give you the bylaw to read?
No, I read it myself because
Good.
that's what I do on a number of other boards that I'm associated with, but that's probably excluding me. But I mean, yeah, it seems that having no prior knowledge of things done in the past, it seems like it's within this committee amongst the bylaws to make a recommendation to the select board. It doesn't, if you really read between lines, it doesn't necessarily say recommendation to approve. So in my interpretation of it, the finance committee could theoretically recommend to not approve, and the select board could go against it.
Right, right, and that's.
It's happened.
But it's a documentation thing of like, the finance committee at least, for lack of better terms, kicked the tires, got the information they needed. Again, in my experience, it's something that sounds like department heads and Kim, who I'm assuming, collects and collaborates all that data, puts it all together, would have an opportunity to, review with this committee to really, have that more nitty gritty questioning. And then it goes up a level and then with that recommendation, and the higher level goes to the board or select board in this case. But yeah, it seems that there's the role and the recommendation itself has become somewhat merged together with a larger meeting.
Well, there's no question that the board can, the finance committee rather, can recommend against the particular article. There's no question about that. And further, the finance committee itself may be in a position to disagree, where, for example, you may have a majority of the finance committee in favor and a minority of the finance committee opposed. There's nothing to prevent the publication of a minority report by the finance committee. So, for example, now you put the facts in front of the board of selectmen, you put the facts in front of the town meeting, you have a majority report, a minority report. The majority is in favor of this particular article, the minority is against. And this is the sweet music of a democratic republic in which we live in, and it goes to the floor and there's a vote, and people now with a clicker, right? This is terrific, right?
I do think that there is that additional side benefit of transparency for the town, that people can watch this. They can watch this, in a couple days on YouTube, and they can see what we discussed.
Or tune in tonight.
Or they can tune in tonight.
Right.
So they can tune in tonight and watch it live.
Technology's a wonderful thing.
Right.
if
But,
you get it right.
right. And if we're able to have the boards here, town members, town folks can watch those discussions and see kind of the questions and answers, and have the ability to kind of understand more, much easier than kind of in the past where you had to attend in person, especially for folks who may have mobility issues where that may be a bit difficult. And this is an ability for folks to be able to hear that kind of detail at home. So I think in addition to us doing our due diligence, it offers a level of transparency for the town's folks to be able to understand the budget as well.
I think, I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, I agree with everything you said, Jack. And I would just add that I think what happened, and this is just a little piece as I look back at last year, is we also had in this committee 3 new members. And I'm not trying to say that you didn't come on prepared or I didn't, but I feel much more comfortable right now looking at the schedule of the department head than I did a year ago, knowing which, if I have a question, where to look, and to Mike's point, I agree. I have no issue with the joint. And if I have the joint meetings, if I have a question, I'm going to ask it, whereas I think last year I really didn't have that know-how or really felt comfortable, but now I have no issue. So I think there was some growing pains last year as well, for lack of a better word.
Well, that's a natural reaction, whether it's this board,
Right.
whether you get a new job somewhere or serving on another board. It takes a season or two. Look at Mac Jones. Takes a season or 2 before he knows how to throw that ball.
Right.
You follow what I'm saying? And like you just said, this year, you've got a couple seasons under your belt. You know what's coming. This gentleman here is in your shoes that you were in 2 years ago. He's going to be going, okay. And you learn as you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think last year was, there were actually 3 new members, because I didn't know that Mike Jones was due. So
Right.
there's 3 of us, so that's almost 50%. And I know at the time Norman wasn't, didn't come to a lot of meetings. So there were many times, I think, when the majority of people on this board were here for maybe our second or third meeting ever. You know what I'm saying? And I think that sort of added to some of the issues that we had last year. And I'm not trying to say that answers all the questions or the concerns. I'm just saying that I think that added to some of the issues we had last year. That's all I'm trying to say.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And don't forget it, like you said, like you're saying, there were 3 new members. Well, like with a new job or whatnot, that puts, for lack of a better term, a strain on the guys that have been here. You know what I mean? So that, because we're a board, we're a team, not 2 guys. I happen to be the senior member, and not only by age, but by but by the years that I've served. You know what I mean? So sometimes you go, well, why is everybody looking at me? You know, we're a team here, you know, and we should all be stepping up to the plate. Again, that's why we reorganized every year, so everybody gets a taste of being the guy that everybody looks to. Okay, how do you want to run the meeting? How do you want to approach this? The one guy that's going to represent the rest of us in an orderly fashion. You know.
So I'd like to talk through operationally what we have ahead of us, right? So we have an outline of dates that we're expected to be provided budget presentations from each of the department heads. At some level of work was done ahead of that, of which none of us are involved in any way, shape, or form, right? Not one word iota of it is presented to us before that. Now, there's an ask for some of the information to be provided at least 48 hours ahead of time. I brought up that point at the last select board meeting pretty adamantly. Hopefully, department heads are able to accommodate that. Some did and some didn't last year. That at least helps give us a prep, especially for the newer folks, of what they're going to present. Whether that's enough or not is a different story. I think this is where my comfort level of how this board operates, I feel like that expectation needs to be set, because I think meeting with maybe Kim and someone from the, anybody else from the finance department specifically about how it all rolls up instead of each one of the department heads doing their dance multiple times. I can see value in that, because at the end of the day, the finance department is the one rolling up all of the work with the department heads. I'd rather them be running their departments than doing a dance in front of us if we have a full finance team that's diving into the nitty gritty gory details of all of that stuff, right? I sort of look at it as, if I have a big, massive program, there's one program manager that can talk to everything, right? I want to see the program manager that is owning the finance piece of this and can dive into all the nitty gritty details, as much as probably where we need to know, right? So it'd be great to maybe have that session regarding all of the finances for the town ahead of time before each department head meets with us. I still like the joint meeting, because I still question what conversations and what questions can't be had at that meeting that requires yet another meeting on the books that everybody has to schedule, come to, attend, and be a part of, that we can't ask at that one meeting. I still am, I can't find a question or a discussion point that can't be brought up at that joint meeting that has to happen at a specific FinCom only meeting.
Yeah, I guess the issue that I've had with that is that the budget isn't final. So there's still they're still working through kind of some of the issues. And so there's not a final budget for us to make a recommendation on, because there still may be some changes based on, they need to hear all the department heads come in. We need to understand kind of what the school request will be. There may be some going back and forth to say, okay, we got the school request now. We have to change, we have to tighten things here based on that. So they make the changes that they need to, and then we get a view of all the department after it's been reviewed by the select board and said, okay, here's what we're asking for.
Yep.
And at the budget presentations, which start, I think, tomorrow night, that level of finality with that request isn't in place yet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, here's what we want. Here's what we want. We'll get Alan to come in and he'll say, I want a skid loader. I want the thing to do the sidewalks. Because we get, whatever year we get this, we get all the things, right?
And again, and along with that, I understand what you're saying, and along with that, we also have to know what our revenue is gonna be, so that we can say, I'll use, like you said, Alan, well, Alan, I would like this year, I'd like that this year.
Right.
But we gotta be on top of what the revenue projections are.
Right.
We just can't say, we shouldn't be just saying, okay, we'll look into it. We should be able to understand, all right.
Yeah.
X amount of dollars is coming in more than last year or less than last year. Fortunately for us, the town, when I say us, that the last few years have been good for us. But there was a time when several years in a row, we were struggling. And I mean struggling to make ends meet and keep our commitment to the school.
Yeah.
So the revenue projections were discussed last
Right.
select board meeting, right? I was in attendance, you were in
Yeah.
attendance,
Yep.
Ron, I think I saw you on there.
Yeah, I was on.
Right?
Yep.
So, people who weren't there can go back and watch the meeting, right? So the revenue projections were discussed. Yes, it wasn't at a specific FinCom meeting. I don't think the conversation would have changed. It's not like I asked questions. It's not like you asked questions. You know, it's not like we weren't able to walk through those details.
Yeah.
Um,
I guess what I would say is that, from my point of view, that the FinCom should reserve the right to have all the department heads that we need come in and present if there's substantial changes to their budgets than what is presented at the joint. And that we're able to ask questions, and we should build in a schedule that allows us the time to have the department heads in that we need, and Kim here, to answer the questions that we have once the presentations to the select board have been concluded. And a budget is then a working budget is then quote approved.
Didn't last year we had a cadence of, we would see a presentation, we would assume a scheduled FinCom meeting to go through anything we would think of the following week, because the budget presentations are like every 2 weeks, I think. Right. So we, instead of having multiple meetings in 1 week, we decided on a TikTok every other week cadence to discuss what we heard last week, and is there anything that we want to focus on for the discussions for the following week, right? And if we wanted to bring a department head back in to that meeting that was on the books, there's nothing stopping us from doing that. We ended up canceling, I think, all but one of them, because we decided what we heard at the joint meeting was enough. I don't remember anybody voicing a requirement to bring somebody in to dive deeper into it. So there's nothing stopping us from doing that.
Other than time.
It is a time commitment, and I would rather have a TikTok cadence of an assumed meeting that has a high likelihood of being canceled, assuming that we get good information and have good discussion at the select board joint meeting. Versus we're going to have, Chief Kessler come in and he's going to do a song and dance at the select board meeting, and then he's going to do the exact same thing for the same group of people for us to go through that again. Like, I'd rather talk about the exceptions or massive changes. Right?
I would rather talk about it once it's close to being final.
Yeah.
That's my issue.
Yeah, I didn't interrupt.
Sorry, go ahead, Jack.
I think maybe one of the assumptions is that, for example, the presentation by a particular department head to the finance committee is going to be the same as it is to the Board of Selectmen. And I think that that's an assumption. And I think it would probably depend on when.
Mhm.
So if it's like immediately following, I would suspect to be very little change.
Yeah.
However, to the extent that there's a series of sort of back and forth between, for example, Kim and the department heads about, what is within the art of the possible, right? That is, what what the department heads want as opposed to what is available, right? That negotiation that goes back and forth between them. I think we benefit from hearing from Kim after that has taken place. The idea is that, for example, there may very well be an ask from, I'm making this up, fire department and the police department that is at X, and, you know, through some negotiations with Kim, there's a decision jointly to come in at X -5 for both because of other demands that the Board of Selectmen sees in other departments, other needs that are out there. Now we're in a position to actually get the benefit of Kim's input as to, this was the original ask, this is why we had to pare it back, everybody's on board for the pare back, with the exception of, there may be a particular line item that the fire chief or the police chief feels very strongly about. And quite frankly, there's a disagreement about it. Well, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think where my disappointment in the process lies is I think in that back and forth of, if we're going to not approve an ask, or even maybe approve some of the asks, right? If we go through the asks with them and we don't have an issue with it, moving forward with it, that was our time to say, I have an issue with what you're proposing here, right? But when the Board of Selectmen say, we're going to, remove an ask from one department to fund an ask from another, I would like to be a little bit more involved in those conversations to be able to provide the voter input and perspective on whether that's a recommended direction or not, right? And the general feeling of what we believe the public's view would be on those things, right? The only one of the ones that comes to mind, I think, was, some of the library asks were not staffed, right, last year. And I can't recall exactly what was, approved, where did we move the nuggets around in order to pay somebody else to not do that, right? We can approve that that's their final decision and say, well, okay, that was the right thing to do. There's a piece of it where it would be good to have at least one piece of input, maybe with Kim and the finance department, on the total, like, hey, this is what we want to do before going into the finalization of this is what we're going to propose is what's done. And that's done with.
Sorry.
Yeah, Jody.
Keep going. Sorry, guys. No, I've been listening to your discussion, a good discussion, and just wanted to provide you guys with some information. So you're probably wondering why I'm at this meeting and how I can be of help to all of you. But I know most of you have emails with the town of Mendon and hopefully have taken a look at the SharePoint site. Have any of you guys been out there?
Yes.
Okay, great. I think that that's a great place for you guys to start poking around as far as getting some information. Mike, like you had said, and I think Nick, you had mentioned it too, just sort of being on the forefront of some information as opposed to sitting in a meeting and hearing it for the first time. It's really makes it challenging to be able to react to it without having background. So for FY24, there's a lot of supporting documents for what all those budget requests are, so that you can see where they're starting, and then sit through the conversations and see, what that dialogue becomes as part of the select board meeting. Ask the questions you want to ask. And I think Jack might have mentioned this. The school ask is a real big piece of this as well. That happens in March-ish. So of course, I guess I'm just encouraging you guys to take a look at the share site, look at historical budgets, look at this year's information. The town bylaw is there with regards to your role. And if you guys need me for anything, any specifics, you want to dig in deeper to something and you need a, revenue expense report from a previous year or whatever the case may be, I'm certainly here to be a resource for you guys as well, with whatever you might have for questions and what you might need. I think ideally, the way that Kim has envisioned the finance department coming to be, Mike, you had mentioned this at the beginning, is really to have that the inputs from all areas. Our finance team will be made up of, our assessor, our accountant, the treasurer collector. Kim is leading the charge with all of those things and will be mentoring me through that process as soon as we're fully staffed in the treasury office. But in the meantime, if you guys have any questions on the process, need information, need specific information about a department or reports and that sort of thing, I'm certainly willing to help you guys out in that manner.
Great.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sure.
So operationally, I don't think there's anything stopping us from putting our own meetings on the books. What I really want to try and encourage is to not have to have the department heads do the same thing twice. And yes, my assumption is that based off of the timing around things, what they would tell us is the same thing that we would hear at the select board meeting. So if we believe that that would be different and we want different asks, then we either ask to make sure that that collateral is available for us to self-serve, or we have the specific asks and bring them in specifically to talk about those specific details. We can either request that at the FinCom meeting, or we can say we would like this to be a part of the select board meeting to help make your time more efficient and not have to have you come to another meeting to get into these level of details, right? So.
Right, and all the budget, all the departments have uploaded their supporting documents as well. So all that stuff is out there as to what their asks are going to be. Like you mentioned, Mike, if there's specific things that you guys want to see and drill down to, into before particular budget presentations, just shoot me an email, give me a shout, and I can gather what you might need.
Yeah, I know last year, I asked Chief Kessler for the KVS details to go through, all of the line items just to understand where everything was at. That was all provided digitally. I think I forwarded it out to you guys. I didn't feel the need to dive deeper into it. I saw what was in there. We were able to see the deltas, the changes. I like that level of detail. Some departments didn't have that level of information. Some of them I also didn't require that level because the size and number of line items they have. It's just not that necessary to get that deep into the detail, right?
Yeah, Jody, I think the SharePoint, having the SharePoint as a central repository for the files is a very good.
Yeah, it's a great collaborative space. And if you
Yeah.
guys have recommendations on what you want to see, certainly let me know. And the only other thing that I wanted to mention is this year, you're going to see a new chart of accounts. I know we talked about that in different select board meetings when the revenue presentation was being delivered. But that whole process and pulling the information out of KVS, importing it into Springbrook, really getting our arms around the reporting capabilities of Springbrook and what all that's going to look like on a going forward basis, and then training our department heads to, be able to go in. There's a really nice record of all of the versioning and the changes and, the differences that are going from one discussion to the next, and sort of what those impacts are and sort of what those transition points are, that we can go back and look at, so there are some definite benefits to the new software as it relates to extended budgeting. But full disclosure, we're still learning. So, if there's something that you guys have experienced in the workplace or anywhere else that you say, hey, I wonder if it can do this, ask, we'll dig into it and figure it out. But that's also just something notable for this year.
I do have one question in looking back at historical data and being able to
Sure.
align it with current data. I know the department number, charge numbers or whatever you call them,
Sure, yeah.
those have changed. Is it a line for line exact,
No, not in all cases. No, not in all cases. But there is a crosswalk. We do have a crosswalk available if you are looking for, all right, well, what special revenue accounts, are those one for one, or maybe, utilities line items got bucketed, or, contract services. Well, what does that mean? What did that make up? Certainly those kinds of questions I can be helpful to you to answer.
Jody, just one suggestion, and it's just a suggestion, is in
Sure.
looking at the folder, each of the departments uploaded their kind of supporting documents or kind of their rationale.
Yep.
And they all seem to do it in a different kind of both file format, but also kind of layout format, right?
Yeah,
And-
I noticed that as well. Yep.
And it may be an opportunity to kind of for best practices, kind of looking across all the departments,
Sure.
seeing kind of how maybe one or a bunch of them lay out the content and maybe have them submit a
Yeah,
kind of a more
consistency.
standardized,
Yep.
so
Yep.
that it's, when you're looking at them, you can see, okay,
Sure.
this is the narrative and this is
Yep.
kind of the,
Exactly. Here's the backup documents, but the baseline is the same. Yep.
so
No,
that's
that's
just,
good feedback. Thank you.
just a suggestion.
What point of administration, people taking notes? Jody, did I read that that was supposed to be your role for the FinCom now?
Say again.
Administrative duties for the FinCom?
Well, I posted these meetings. Mike had reached out to me to see if I could help him post this meeting, so I did help with that. Yes.
Okay. I guess I'm not taking notes or capturing anything. I didn't know if that was supposed to be your role in helping out the FinCom too.
Oh, not that I've been told, but I,
Well, the good news is recorded.
Yeah, well,
Good
we'll
thing.
go back, yeah. Technology saves us again.
Well, administratively, there is a requirement that at all meetings, whether it's finance committees, selectmen's, Concom, planning board, that even though it's being recorded, that becomes part of the minutes. There are supposed to be recorded minutes. They don't have to be the greatest. But again, time and date, members present, any major decisions.
I think it's a great point. I think it's a great point, and, we obviously enjoyed the service for many years of Gene Davern, who since retired, so it would be, I think, really terrific if we could get some help in that regard. Jody, is that something, I mean, I don't want to speak for the
Well,
whole group, here, but I mean,
Let me just explain. That position was created a long time ago because at the time, out of the 7-member board, one of the members is, as you can see in the bylaw, somebody's got to be the clerk. But it was decided a long time ago that somebody taking notes and keeping the minutes is concentrating on that, not actively taking part in discussions, decisions, etc. So, and I worked for this maybe 15 years ago, that, hey, we're handling $10 million budget here. Let's get ourselves a secretary. So,
well, it's
So
great,
again, it's
great
in-
historical perspective, I
right,
think, Mike.
it's
Yeah.
in the,
Yeah.
it's in the Board of Selectmen's hand.
Yeah.
And, I mean, they've known for a while now that we don't have a recording secretary. You know,
And I guess over the short haul, hypothetically, over, at least for 118 tomorrow, arguably that gets covered by the,
Well, right, we're not breaking any laws because we're,
No. I mean, to imply that. I mean, a recording secretary of the Board of Selectmen, the joint meeting, there'll be a recording secretary there, it's joint
Right,
meeting.
which would be-
I think we're covered.
right.
I think we're covered, but on a go-forward basis, I think you make an excellent point. I think, from a resource standpoint, I think it would be terrific if we could get,
Right.
our next
So-
Gene Davern, no one will compare, Mike, but our next,
I know she's a hard act to follow.
correct.
But again, whoever's going to be the chairman should have someone to call and say, hey, schedule a meeting, find out, send a letter to the board or send a letter,
Do we know if it's been posted?
I have no idea.
So there
Why
is
don't you
no-
guys circle back with Mike on that, and Mike can reach out to Kim?
There is no FinCom meeting posted for tomorrow, right? And any meeting has to be posted with 48 hours.
There is, it is, Mike.
For FinCom?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it was
Yeah,
posted.
those two meetings we got out last week, last Wednesday. We made sure that those got out. Yep.
So with that being said, before we go too much further, I think we should reorganize, get a formal chairman. That, again, that was Mike's intent of the meeting, because he called me and asked me, I said, yeah, it's a new season, you know? So,
Well, we
take a
could,
few-
I guess we could move to have Mike not only be the chair, since he's not here, we could move to have him be the clerk as well, I guess, since he's not here. I guess. We could do that.
Second.
Hey, guys, I'm gonna excuse myself if you guys are gonna do, if they were good with budget discussion stuff, and follow up with me if you guys need anything, report wise or details as you maneuver and check out that SharePoint resource.
Thank you, Jody.
Thank you, Jody.
Thank you.
Jody.
Good
All right,
night.
guys, take
Jody,
Thank you.
care.
a pleasure working with you. I
Yes.
know Mike doesn't want to be chairman again.
Oh, okay.
He's busy. I do not want to be chairman. I've served many years as chairman, et cetera, et cetera. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of the 5 other members, someone should step up to the plate and grab the bull by the horns and wrestle it right down to the ground. So with that being said, I'll make the first nomination, and I nominate Mike Kruger. Because what you've expressed, I agree with. And as I said earlier when we started, it's not like the old days. We gotta step into the 21st century. You know, this is the way it's going. We're paying a lot of money in salaries for this finance group. So, you know, I actually kind of agree with it, you know. So, like I said, I'll make a nomination to nominate Mike Kruger for chairman.
Great.
We need a second for
I'll
that.
second the motion to nominate Mike Craig.
Any discussion? You got any thoughts? You're the new guy, I understand that, but you know what? Jump right in.
I mean,
Don't be bashful about expressing what you think or what you feel, because, like I said, we're a team. I've served with these guys for several years now. Not only are we finance committee members, but I consider these guys friends also. Not that we sit around and drink beer and every night together, but, you know.
yeah, I mean, having no other context other than this meeting and
Sure.
my own, personal reading and past experiences, the way you summarized last year's experience process and some of the recommended improvements, I mean, I would support that as well, even with my having met you on the front step an hour ago.
The only thing I would ask is, does anybody else want that position? I guess I'll say, I can tell you, I do not, so that's easy. And you said you do not, so I was just curious.
No, right. And
Jack
again,
or Nick would,
it's because, to be quite honest, I would do it, but presently, my job, I'm still working, is I have some big demands on me that, again, I'm not complaining because I love what I do. That's why I'm still working. I can retire. I'm old enough to retire, but why should I if I'm having fun? And again, I have no intention of giving up the finance committee because I like being a member of it. So why would I want to give it up? I like doing it. But as far as being the leader, especially this year, I'll be honest, I can't do it.
I'd be curious what Jack and Nick as far as,
Yeah, I'm happy to support nomination of Mike. I think, there's a lot to be said for, fresh perspective, fresh set of eyes on the process. And I think that that would be a marvelous thing. You obviously are very detailed, and I think we'd benefit, from that. So I'm fully prepared to support Mike. And if I guess if it would be appropriate, I think we ought to have a vice on the committee as well.
Well, we'll make a nomination after we take a vote.
I don't want to take it out of order. Here. I wouldn't want to do that. But I'd fully support Mike.
I completely agree. I think Mike's been a great member of the board. He's asked some tough questions, and I think he would represent us well. So I'm fully supportive.
Yeah, I agree. He's shown that he grasped the concept.
Yep.
Thank you.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda
Wait, where's the opposed?
will be unanimous. Nomination for vice chair.
What, you could keep that though, correct? No?
I wouldn't, like I said, I'm gonna back away.
I mean, I guess the other question is, what is the responsibilities of the vice, of the filling in when the,
Filling in when the chairman can't make it, because again, we all have busy lives. I'm sure you're not gonna make 100% of the meetings, although I'm sure you'll try, the same way that I've always tried, the same way you've always tried.
So, yeah, there's definitely going to need, we will definitely need a vice chair. My schedule is very, very tight. I'm making this work as much as I can. So we will absolutely need a vice chair.
I was just doing the recording. from the last vote. The record will show 1, 2, 3, 4 in favor, none opposed. And am I mistaken? You're non-voting
I'm
member.
non-voting,
I just
yeah.
want to be careful here, right?
Yep.
So 1, 2, 3, 4 in favor. You didn't vote for yourself, and none opposed, right? 4 in favor, none opposed. I got
you
that.
could oppose, right?
You could oppose that. You could oppose.
I will
Right.
not oppose, yeah.
If nominated, you will not run. If elected, you shall not serve. Some great president.
I gotta remember that.
Some great president said that. If I may, I would like to nominate, if he's so willing to serve, Nick Ciantra. I think he'd be fantastic as vice chair, given his tenure on the finance committee and given his knowledge of the process. And for the very same reasons that I think Mike, he's got the demeanor, he's got the I think the discretion, and I think he's got the confidence of the people at the town hall as well. I would nominate
I'll second
Nick
that motion.
Ciantra.
I'll second that. Any more discussion? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I'm happy to help. It's not something that I would throw my hat in, but if the board feels that I would be useful, then I'm happy to help.
Well, we could do it. We could all line up and say, step forward, and the rest of us step backwards.
Right.
You know,
It's not something that I would typically volunteer for, but if the board feels that I would be a good fit for it, I would accept it.
I agree with Jack. I think you'd be a very good fit.
Yeah, we need, I think it says something to have both at least one of the two, vice chair, having been on the committee for more than, nothing against you, Mike, but 1 year. I mean, in other words, I think that
Yeah.
it helps. That's all. I really think it does.
So all in favor?
Aye. Opposed?
Don't see any. And there's one more thing. We need we got to formally name a clerk.
So Mike, with the history on the clerk's role that Jean filled, right?
She was the recording clerk. She was not a sworn-in member.
Right, right. Is that position still,
Well, we have money in the budget this year for it.
that's what I mean, right?
So again, it's up to the Board of Selectmen
To fill it,
to fill it,
right.
if they so desire.
I understand.
I would suggest we temporarily have somebody do it until I guess I can reach out to the select board to.
Well, right, as the new chairman.
Yeah.
My suggestion is, as the new chairman, again, if we had a recording secretary, as the new chairman, the first thing that you would do is have us secretary draft a letter for your approval, informing the board that the change, the handing of the baton, the changing of the guard officially, and so.
In the absence of that, I will reach out to Mr. Morali and.
Right, I would put something together and, again, formality means a lot. The old, well, I thought I told you. Oh, is that what you meant? It's always good to get it, as I'm sure Jack will agree with, get it down on paper.
If it's not in writing, it never happened, right?
That's right.
The amount of emails I send just to have it written down and quickly responded to.
Yep.
So, I will take the action to definitely get that done.
Okay.
I'm going to make a suggestion that our newest member, one as a as a welcome to the club, but also in the essence of what you discussed earlier, being a non-voting member at this point, right, affords the opportunity to be a little more focused on recording.
Which I want to touch on that after. So,
In my day-to-day where I work, I'm in charge of coordinating my own finance committee, which then reports to the board, and I am the minute taker and a lot of good stuff. So I do have a little bit of
Well,
experience with that.
well, goodness gracious, you should have said that from the beginning.
We'll talk about anyone to run,
so I guess, Mr. Chairman, you're asking for a motion.
I will make a motion to nominate Adam, right? Yeah. Nominate Adam as our recording clerk temporarily until we find an official position, which could end up being Adam, but I make.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We gotta have discussion first, right?
Well, yeah, but like I said, it's all new to you. You
Yeah.
get it.
So do we have is there any discussion?
No, I would hurry up and take the vote before he changes.
We're thrilled to have Adam here.
The only discussion I have is why did they make him a non-voting member?
Because he's not a
I'm not a citizen.
What's that?
I'm not a citizen. I'm Canadian.
Oh, you're a citizen of the town,
Yes.
but you're not an American.
So my application's about to go in to become a citizen. But currently I'm not a.
Okay,
US
so it's more of a formality.
Yeah. So once assuming everything goes well and my application goes through, it'll.
I wouldn't,
That.
yeah. I don't know why that would be. You're a citizen of the town. I know that you have to be a citizen of the town to serve on a board.
And there was some discussion, right?
I believe it came down to voter registration is one piece that ties into it. So
Oh, okay.
I think at least from what I spoke to Lonnie.
Yeah.
I spoke to him a couple times. I think it came down to voter registration and not being a registered voter, being a
They
non.
ran it through legal, and this was the suggested path forward, and there was a precedent already set. Apparently, we've had non-voting members on the board previously, so.
Right.
It was discussed at the meeting that I zoomed into.
Yep.
You were at, Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, that's fine. I'm not gonna argue
Yeah.
the point. But if I was younger, I would definitely challenge it. As a citizen of the town. You pay taxes
Oh, I see.
So,
what you're
in
saying,
this
yeah.
town.
Sure
right?
do.
But like I said, I'm not gonna,
Well, back to the motion. Any other further discussion on the any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Settled. Thank you.
Happy to contribute.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you to all of you for agreeing to serve.
Well, so on the topic of schedule then, do we want to put in place a post joint meeting, FinCom meeting for us to discuss what we just heard and possibly, essentially the agenda will be anything we just heard. It's the opportunity for us to bring in department heads for deeper dives on something. And is there anything about what's coming up that we want to either request for the select board meeting or we'll just call it future facing
Yeah.
meetings, right?
I think I would suggest that we have our own meeting to digest what was presented to us at the joint meeting.
Correct.
Because quite frankly, not all of us are going to make that joint meeting in person. And, it'd be a chance to, what did they mean by this? Yeah, I didn't make the meeting. If you fill it in. It's just a suggestion.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly what I was getting to is post select board, post joint meeting. We meet to talk about last week, possibly bring in any department heads and focus on, is there anything about next week that we want to
Be ready for it. Give them a heads up.
say, hey, whatever, police is, I know this isn't true. Police is going to be the following week, right?
Right.
Chief, can you give me X, Y, and Z during the select board?
Now, these meetings with these joint meetings, what are they, every 2 weeks?
Roughly.
118 is the first one, Mike.
That's tomorrow.
7 to 9. The second one is February 1, town clerk
Okay,
elections,
so
finance.
there's,
February 15th is the third, parks, highway, benefits. Then 3/1 is library, health, council on aging. 3/5 is the school.
okay, so there's an off week that we could meet just, whether it's for half an hour or 2 hours to digest what was presented to us.
I might suggest that the chair have a discussion with Kim to understand kind of the timing of when the budgets will be in a more final state
Sure.
to make it's an efficient use of our time. So maybe it doesn't have to be every other week. Maybe we can block those, maybe a couple meetings and kind of bunch them together. Maybe later in the process, a little bit later, as the budgets get a little bit more finalized, then we can have those maybe kind of clarification discussions. It may be useful just to have a conversation with Kim to understand kind of her overall process of kind of refining those initial kind of department presentations to make sure that our time is valuable. Because if they're going to be doing kind of, if they're not going to be kind of finalizing them until like kind of mid-February, it may benefit us to kind of wait on those until they're maybe in a tighter place. That would just be a suggestion.
Yeah, I agree for all the reasons cited there, that it'd be, I think, helpful to speak to Kim on what her plan is to basically sort of finalize, if you will. Because with the school out at 3/5, my bet is there's probably going to be a couple of waves, a couple of 3 waves, right? Because Kim, as she, usually does, basically lays out for the department heads what the reasonable expectation is going to be for for example, a percentage increase, right? And then identify anything that would be a deviation from that, as she ordinarily would. What's the justification for that deviation? And it may be for good cause, right? It may be something the department head doesn't have control over. And there may very well be some back and forth on that. To your point, I do think the further we can push that round of discussions with the department heads out from those initial meetings, I think that better will be served, because we'll have more information, I think, quite frankly. And I think, Kim will probably be in a better position as well to give us her take and to give us the take of the board.
Yeah, it may benefit us to have those as late as we possibly can in the process, as those budgets will be more finalized, especially after that we hear from the school,
I agree.
which could have an impact on the first budget that's presented tomorrow night.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree with you.
Is there value?
March 15th. And this, I got, so what do you, Wednesday, March 15th, Wednesday, March 1st, Wednesday, March 15th.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's March 1st, library, March 15th.
Correct.
I'm sorry for
No,
school.
that's okay. I just
I
wanted to-
apologize. Thank you for
Yeah,
the clarification.
Because that's the biggie, the last.
As we work towards the May, right? It's May.
Right, and that's what I was thinking of, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
No,
Rob.
no, it's
Right, and believe it or not, we've started the process. My years on the board tells me that this time of year, it's gonna go by fast, even though you don't think so. It's gonna go by fast. And one of the things, because I've been on it so long, is we're in winter. All of a sudden, we're gonna be at the town meeting. You know what that means? Summer's around the corner. You know what I mean? So it's gonna
From your
come
lips to
fast.
God's ears.
Go. Is there anybody against me putting meetings on the books post each joint meeting? With the essence of, if we don't need them, we can just cancel them. I'd rather get them.
Get them on, right, get them on the docket.
And I'll-
It's easy to cancel.
Yeah, it's easy to
tough
cancel. Yeah,
Go,
right.
geez, we don't have to, didn't have enough
Yeah,
time. to
and that
get
makes
it
sense to me.
And then I'll work with Kim to see when the best time to have things are in a more final state, right? I think there's an official meeting that we have to have that finalizes everything.
Right, we present it, it's a preliminary meeting, it's a finance committee open budget meeting.
Right, right. But before that, we should have a meeting with, if we have questions specifically of any of the department heads, that we're able to pull them in
Right.
ahead of that meeting, which didn't seem to happen this last year, but hopefully this year
Also
with your
gonna make sure
leadership.
that Kim and Jody are on each one of the FinCom invites.
Yeah.
Because we felt like we were constantly pulling Kim in unbeknownst to
Yeah, that's a
her.
great point. That's a great point. I think there was some oversight there and perhaps some drop stitches that,
Right.
yeah, it's a great point. You should be invited.
So is the process going to be, we'd have a meeting, obviously the joint meeting, like tomorrow. And your thought process is to have another one, if we need it, because it's always easy to cancel, as we said,
The following week.
following week.
Right,
Yep.
if all of a sudden we're looking, if 4 out of the 7 of us are going, did you understand that meeting? Well, we should be meeting to
Yeah.
make sure we understand.
Yeah, and we can also prep the department heads of, hey, this is gonna be the opportunity for us to say, we didn't get what you said, and we just didn't want to belabor that meeting, or we want to do a deeper dive onto whatever, right? The fire truck thing, right? This is when we're going to ask you to come back. It will be on the Tuesday at 7 PM after you've done your joint meeting presentation, right? So they're aware of that. On that same topic, Tuesday at 7 PM definitely works for me.
Yep,
Um,
7 o'clock,
Yeah.
7 o'clock works for me.
Yeah.
Gives me enough time to.
And I guess the only thing I suggest there is, I certainly have no objection to that, is just availability, right, of the space, right?
Yeah.
We got to make sure we got that
Right,
pinned down.
that's why it's a good idea to,
Right,
oh, hey, post all these meetings for us.
Right,
right.
right.
So the thought would be next Tuesday? Is that it?
Personally, I had one conflict. Typically, my own employer board meeting is the third or fourth Tuesday of the month for that same time slot. Not that that necessarily derails the entire group.
No, no, true, but now that you see what, what we've agreed to, it's like with, because I serve on the Concom, and again, I know I try to move my schedule, my personal schedule and work schedule to avoid the second and fourth Thursday. Because again, I enjoy being on the Concom. I've been on it for 35 years. I'm not ready to stop doing it, so I make sure that my Thursday nights, the second, fourth, free, unless I'm going to Jamaica or something like that.
So
So, I'm,
typically, it's, yeah, for me, it's typically the fourth Tuesday evening of the month.
that's fine, so,
Conflicts will arise.
so everybody agrees that Tuesday works pretty much.
Tuesdays, yeah.
Tuesday, 7 p.m.
Yeah, I like Tuesdays at 7. Hopefully that works for
Yeah.
this room.
I think so.
It works out personally for me, so.
Good.
Okay. I don't have anything else I can think of until we start getting information. So I would highly suggest everybody start poking around the SharePoint. Folks need tutelage on that. I can try to be as much help as possible, but I reached out to Jody. She offered.
Yeah, Kim sent a link, so we should have it on our emails. So.
Yeah, I saw that, so.
Great. and
So
we'll see
just to recap what we've accomplished here tonight, we have a new chairman, a new vice chairman, and a clerk. And we are going to set, we've set our schedule for every other Tuesday in between the joint meetings.
Yes.
And if we need to meet, we'll meet. If we don't, it's easy to cancel. You'll be sending a letter to Kim and the Board of Selectmen, informing them on the new chairman, et cetera, et cetera. And I would suggest that you also remind them that we would appreciate or ask them how they're making out on finding a recording clerk for us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I again encourage a discussion with Kim around the kind of the timing of the meetings, because I do think, like Jack mentioned, later in March is going to be, I think, critical, especially if once we get the school budget, if there's adjustments that we may need to have the board, the department heads in to discuss changes in their particular.
The school budget's a big driver on
Yeah. Yeah.
what we do.
Yeah.
As a town.
Yeah.
For what the town budget is. You know. So all we, again, like you said, there've been times over the years that they come in with a request and we go, oh my God, and we're scrambling to try to do the best we can to fulfill their needs, which means town side of the budget
May need some adjustments.
take the back seat.
Yeah.
Fortunately, the last few years, the town side of the town, we've generated enough money that we're able to accomplish some things. Again, police station, getting the campus over, buying some chairs, et cetera, et cetera. These are.
I don't remember approving these. I mean, I like it, don't get me wrong.
But you know what I mean? But as we all know, what goes up comes down. And what goes down will eventually come back up. So right now we're up. We're doing well. And we should plan or remind everybody that, yeah, we're doing fine now, but be wary of the future, what could happen.
With that, I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
We need that discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, stop recording.
Good night, gentlemen.